Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Healyverse. Today is going to be a tutorial episode. First one I'm doing. Very excited. Let's get into it. So today I'm going to be looking at turning a feather into a quill. So that when we go to these events and stuff in the future, we've got something that we can scribble down and take notes with authentically without looking like we've bought a Tesco Bic pen along to the occasion. Don't forget, before we get started guys, that subscribe button down there, all lonely. Feel free to go down there, give it some attention before we get going. I'm in no big rush. So the feather I've chosen was this really nice white underwing feather that we got from one of the peacocks. His name's Bobby. My daughter named him. His parents, one of them was a all white peacock and his mum was regular. So he has unusual mottled colours. Every now and again you'll get a nice white one from him instead of the brown ones like we get from all the others. So normally we'd get feathers from them like this, but Bobby likes to drop these every now and again. We appreciate that because they're nice and pretty. So at this point I've made a few of these quills. I feel pretty confident that I can at least show you how to make a more than functional quill for your LARP events or your Renaissance fairs. You know, if you happen to have any feathers lying around and you don't quite know what to do with them, great little hobby. It will take you 10 minutes. Dead simple. So the first thing you'll notice is that sometimes so far down the feather you've got these little spindly extra barbs that you don't really need. They kind of get in the way. So for you to have a decent grip, they roll around your hand. So what you're going to want to do is just trim them back just far enough that you can sort of get your thumb around nicely and still have plenty of room for keeping a nice comfortable grip with it. Now keep yourself nice and close to the end, but have room so that you're not squashing them up because it will just ruin the shape of them anyway. So you're just going to want to take a pair of scissors or any pair of nice sharp bladed cutters really and just give them a little bit of a trim. I ended up using some clippers that we got with our 3D printer because they're just nice and short. The blade's only so long, so you can only go so far with them. You can't accidentally cut too far up. Nice clean cut through. Next, what we're going to look at doing is cutting to where you want your sharpest point to be. You want to make sure that you're past the very tip of the feather where it's kind of all filled in, like with the core is very firm at that point. You don't want any of that. Just get that gone. Away with it. So you're going to want to make sure you're clipping far enough up that you're into the hollow-ish part of the feather. All that should be in there is just that membraney stuff that we're going to deal with in a minute. So some people will try and pick all the membrane stuff out, but I found with these feathers they're so deep that it's kind of easier to just shove it right up into the top and get it out the way. I don't know if that'll come back to bite me later, but for now works just as well to shove it up. And I found that the perfect thing to get it out the way was another feather. Smaller one fit in there perfectly and just crammed it right in there out the way. Okay, so now that that's all in and out the way, what you want to do is you want to hold your feather so that you can feel where it feels comfortable, where it feels like there's a good hang. I have done a couple so that you're holding it and it looks sideways on, but it wants to do that. So we'll let it do that for this one. So what you're going to do once you've got that point is now you're going to mark a couple of little V lines. I found when I did this one, I came a bit close with them. So when I'd cut it, it actually split the feather ever so slightly. So I did have to just trim it back a little bit and then widen that shape out again, but we got there. And again, I found just using those 3D printer cutters to just sort of snip in a little diagonal line from each corner. You want to leave yourself a little bit of a flattened edge. You don't want it to a perfect point. You want it a little bit squared off, and then you're going to slightly soften that off later. So now that you've got that first bit split, you're going to take a knife, Stanley blade, box cutter, anything that you've got that's sharp enough. You're going to take your knife and you're going to run slightly parallel to the first slices that you made, cut from the back side of the feather, leaving yourself a couple of millimeters gap, and in a second we're going to cut that into marry in with the tip of it. So what you're going to do is take your top of your backside lines and you're going to bring them slightly more horizontally to meet in with the bottom of your front tip lines, and it's going to give you almost like a lightning bolt shape that comes down on diagonal angles. Now as you'll see at this point, the tip's gone a bit skinny. It was at this point that I realised I'm just going to have to trim it back a little bit. I did quickly just disappear back for a second just so I could reshape that for all of your benefit so that you could see the proper job being done and not just a slapdash effort. And then, as I mentioned before, you're going to want to get those top corners and just round them in ever so slightly. You don't want them round, but you don't want them so sharp that you're going to tear your paper when you're trying to write with it. You just want them relatively smooth corners. Easily done. A little bit of sandpaper, just try and gently scuff the sides of it just to take any rough sharp spots out of it. It doesn't need much. So the last thing you're going to do is take your knife and you're going to very gently score down the middle center inside of your feather. Now, I cannot stress enough, don't go through. Do not cut all the way through. You just want a groove that once you've dunked the end of it into the ink, it will then allow the ink to channel down to the tip. You don't want to cut all the way through, otherwise you'll just end up with ink all leaking out the back. Don't do it. I actually didn't find that one out the hard way, thank God. But at that, we're pretty much done. That is our fully functioning peacock feathered quill. And all that's left really now is to have a quick test run with it. Let's see what we can do. Forgive my handwriting. I will probably hand it over to my wife to do a tidy job after this, so stick around for that. There we go, not the first one I've done. I did these two last week. I also decided after I'd finished making this white one to make this little fella here. Now this one, the intention of this is that it's going to go in our books, so that when we do go on anything ourselves, we can just tuck this one into our books, close them up, and this will just be waiting in there for us to use it later. They're dead easy to clean off when you're done, just a bit of water and wipe them off again, and you're all sorted. This one's going to be used very much, I would imagine. It's just a little fella, just a little guy. But this one, however, I decided I'll try my hand at drawing. I'll draw a picture and I'll ink it with this. Okay, now I'll get my lovely assistant to bring it up right here. Got him! I think that turned out pretty well. Now bear in mind, it's only this big. This is the actual size of it, so I know that the line on it on this side here got a little bit lumpy. But if you look at the cross guard up at the top, and I just get to zoom that in, then you'll see how skinny that middle line running through it was. With this, I did that with a feather. So if we just put that back and put it back to normal size, there's some good lines. There's some good lines, especially these little hatch markings at the top in the handle. They're pretty cool. Like, they are so small and so fine. I don't need to do that while I'm doing that when you're putting it there. These lines, especially up here in the handle and running down the side of the blade, they go so thin. And it was so easy to control with this. It was unusually manoeuvrable and so skinny that it's really easy to find where that line's going to be. I had a bit of a bleed out issue with that line down the side of the blade, like I say, but that was my first time actually putting it on the paper, so I'm not going to be too hard on myself with that one. The last thing I want to do is just draw your attention to this picture I'm going to draw here. Just a simple little fella, you know, just a happy little guy trotting along. And really, just to show you that you can kind of do it with anything, really. It doesn't really matter how stupidly oversized the feather is. In all seriousness, guys, I've really enjoyed making these, and I think I'll probably look at making a few more. So yes, there'll no doubt be more things that we do with these in the near future. I doubt we'll be making another episode on them because it is more of the same. But maybe at some point in the future you may be able to get one of these handmade peacock feather quills all for yourself. Ain't that exciting? There's loads of these laying around. And it's nice to finally have something that we can actually do with them. I think that about wraps it up, guys, here. I just want to do one last thing, and that's pass it over to my wife so that she can do a respectable job of putting it through a good test. Look at that head. Now that's how you do a professional job with it. Not that mockery I did halfway through. Now that my wife showed me how it's properly done, I think that's about everything for today, guys. So if you've made it this far in the video, we really appreciate it, especially with it being the school holidays at the minute. I know it can be hard to get a moment away. So we really appreciate any time that you've taken to watch this video, any more that you take to just creep down there and hit that like button, maybe subscribe, just saying. All that said, thank you very much, guys, and I very much look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you for joining me on my first tutorials. Hopefully there'll be more to come in the future on the next one.